You're listening to Passing Time, a Detroit Lions podcast. We're one pride and all grit, with a passion for Detroit Lions football. Whether you're between meetings, between classes, sitting in traffic, or just relaxing at home, if you have time to pass, pass it with Passing Time. Detroit Lions Talk.
Okay, we're on the clock, and you're passing time with us, a Detroit Lions podcast. I'm Rob.
I'm Brian.
And we have a special guest with you. We got Chris.
Hi, guys.
This is episode 23. We're going to get into Chris. We're going to talk a lot about Chris, but we're going to first give you a little highlight of the podcast we got coming at you. We're going to give a little bit more energy to Monday's game, a statement win for the Lions franchise. You guys agree?
I agree.
I think it is probably the best kind of September game you can have right now, and we'll talk about it.
No doubt about it. We're going to dive deep into this game with the Browns, the Browns, the same Browns that just upset the Green Bay Packers. It's the kind of game that kind of looks like they're the unstoppable force versus the immovable object. The problem is the Browns really struggle on offense, and the Lions have a pulse on defense. But yeah, we're joined by Chris Perfett. He's a news anchor, tech producer, Fox Sports Radio, End Zone Radio Sundays, a true knowledgeable fan, somebody that we've been following for a long time, a guy that we spent some time before here. He's got a great story. He's an awesome dude. He's very knowledgeable and entertaining. So, Chris, why don't you tell our tens of followers a little bit about yourself?
Oh, God, I hate talking about myself. That is like the worst thing anyone could ever do. It's the hardest thing anyone can ever do. No, for those who don't know, I have been blogging and podcasting about the Detroit Lions since 2015. I'm kind of new out on my own right now, working on some independent projects. And yes, I have been working with Fox Sports Radio, which is a major syndication since I've been working with them since it's been before the pandemic, 2019? Oh, God, I've been working here for 6 years. I feel like I'm just going to just keel over at any point. I'm not sure how they haven't fired me. But no, I've kind of done everything at Fox Sports Radio. I've kind of been the king of, I like to think of myself as the viceroy of weekends. I work at a tremendous amount of shows and pretty much every hour of the clock between Saturday and Sunday for most people in this country throughout the years. Some of those have made it on to podcasts I've done in the past, including the one venerable Jonas Knox, who is a Bears fan. You will forgive him for that because he is very self-deprecating, and I enjoy yakking with him. I still work with him on the weekends. But the big thing about me is that I am a I am a Lions fan. I am a big believer in covering the Lions, both as a fan and as trying to cover them as someone with both a bird's eye view and a analytical, I'm not trying to do takes when I do my streams, which I still do after games on twitch.tv/nodecaf with a K. But I do believe in trying to understand this team, which is its own academic, rigorous thing. The Lions are a football team, in case you didn't know. However, football is a lifeblood to this country. It is a lens through which a lot of things are done. It is a piece of civic property. And in the case of the NFL, it is also the source of mass psychosis that happens seemingly every damn week. And how these and how we look at our teams, how we look at our football teams, really impacts kind of the world around us in ways that are, and I'm sorry if this sounds highfalutin, I promise nothing else you get out of me will sound like this, but it is.
No, Chris, this sounds like we're in Rome right now, and the gladiators are in, and you're the kind of guy that's deciding whether it's thumbs up or thumbs down, so continue.
It's been a lot of thumbs downs through the years. It's been a lot of thumbs down since 2015. Let me just say that. This has been a lot more thumbs up, and I don't know where else I go with this. I just prefer talking about the Lions, to be honest. I love NFL history. I'm working on a few projects in that regard. And for the Lions, an incredibly old team with a ton of history behind them, to have been out in the cold for so long and yet have this seismic moment that seems like overnight changed how everyone just talks about this team has always been the most fascinating thing to me. Even what is this now? Year 5 of the Dan Campbell era? But it is
Yes, sir.
not just on a national level, but on a fan level. How it has changed still is something I could probably write a PhD thesis on in group psychology.
Absolutely love it. So you've covered the Lions for a while. And you're coming to us from the West Coast. So you've been all around the United States.
Yeah.
From our talks. What's one thing about the Lions fans that the rest of the country doesn't understand? You've been everywhere.
So to be clear, I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, which meant that growing up, there weren't a lot of reasons between CBS having the Browns and Fox having the Lions to watch good NFL football. Understand that first and foremost, that there was that. Now, I find Lions fans to be extremely combative with the national media, that the national media does not understand the Lions, and I get why that can happen. But I also think when it comes to the Detroit Lions, I think Lions, let me reverse this a little bit. I don't think Lions fans understand that I feel like national people were more quick to adopt to the idea that this is a brand new paradigm with Dan Campbell. That we're not, like, the national media, for whatever it is worth, talks about the Detroit Lions in ways that treats them as an equal now. And it's not going away. And I understand there was kind of early on, there was a lot of the goofy, like a lot of people shaming on the goofy stuff of Dan Campbell, which I don't think was fair from them. But at the same time, I think Lions fans are the ones who are a lot more willing to go back and start invoking the past when something goes wrong. Like, there's the 3 dreaded letters, SOL, same old Lions. And even last year where the Lions only had 3 losses, Lions fans threw that word around a lot more the day after those losses. I understand those losses are emotional, but a lot of other people on the national side said, yeah, it's fine. This is perfectly fine.
That was happening after week 1 of
that
this
was happening
year,
after
so.
week 1. This kind of stuff, that's what I mean. I feel like the national reputation of the Lions for a long time was tarred because of the history of this, but at the same time, right now, they will keep riding them as long as they are good. I think that it was a little premature sometimes on how they jumped away from it. I will say one thing that the rest of the country doesn't understand is how much. How do I put this right? How do I this is, geez, I don't even know how to really put this. I think I wrote this down and I completely lost this. But I feel like a lot of the country does not understand maybe just how many damn Lions fans there are out there. And it still pops up every now and then. I had a friend who I work with, one of the producers I work with here in California, who was shocked that the Lions had fans to fill out 100,000 person stadiums sometimes. And I think always it was always a great sports state of Michigan. I got to meet Joe Dumars, and his philosophy, he told me, like, as the GM of the Pistons, he was always worried about what all the other teams were doing because it's in a hyper competitive sports fan market. Not just the 4 pro sports teams, but also like the basketball and football teams of 2 major Big Ten colleges right down the road. And if you weren't performing well, they'd go somewhere else to the team that was performing well. But football, more than anything, is king in the state of Michigan. And so when the Lions finally started being competent, not just like we've seen good teams before. Like, we saw that 2014 team, but fans still kind of held them at an arm's length. it's a full-on embrace for Dan Campbell, and I think it gives them a lot more. Like, look, the losses are few and far between. Maybe that changes if they ever have like a 9-8 season or something. But I think it has allowed people to be a lot more close to the team.
And be proud of that team too, right? I mean, before, when you were the same old Lions, a lot of folks were wearing that Lions gear under another layer, right? So
Yeah.
they weren't loud and proud like you see it today. So
Yeah, and I'm no like history person, but the city of Detroit once was a top 7, top 8 populated city, right? And a lot of that bled out throughout the country, and your fandomship goes with you. That runs through your family's veins. That's passed on to your kids and your grandkids. So Lions fans are popping up a little bit everywhere, as you can tell by the amount of road fans that are showing up to these stadiums.
I mean,
There
you see
are
waves
two-
of Honolulu blue, through every away game. So
There are 2 Lions bars I go to in Los Angeles. Drugstore Cowboy on Sunset Boulevard. Those guys are awesome. They do Honolulu Blue shots on the house for everyone at halftime. And I think it's the Tavern on Main in Santa Monica is the other place. But like this is, yes, California, Florida. A lot of people from around the area, much like me, wanted to get away to warmer places. And yes, you take your fandom with you. Those bars exist just like they do for Packers fans, for Bears fans, for Boston sports fans. They're out there. They can be found. One of my projects I wanted to work on and ended up being aborted was trying to put together a list of Lions bars. Maybe someone will take up that torch at some point, or maybe I'll get the energy to do it again. But I think that is one of those connective tissues that fascinates me to no damn end about sports.
It's absolutely awesome, and here we are. We're talking to you, Lions fans, and what I want to do now is kind of put a bow on this Ravens game because Chris, you waxed eloquence on it, but man, what a Monday night showdown! The ratings were great. It was viewing pleasure for anybody. You didn't have to be a Lions fan, or you definitely probably didn't love it if you were Ravens fans. But if you were just a casual NFL fan and you tuned into that game, that was a wonderful, competitive game. So Dan Campbell, Jared Goff, they are, to us Detroit Lions fans, they are a gift from the football gods. And we don't talk and praise them enough. Dan Campbell 5 years ago walked in, changed the complete culture. And we shit on Jared Goff after the trade of, our savior, Matthew Stafford. And we kind of rejected him and talked about, okay, like, when are we going to get our quarterback? It's probably going to be through the draft, maybe even that same draft pick that they packaged Jared Goff with. And here they are, just the holy grail of Detroit Lions football. Brian, you have thoughts on that?
I mean, I completely agree. You walk in with a Dan Campbell who, I mean, there's going to be a statue made of that guy at the end of his reign in Detroit. And, you got a team full of warriors are willing to run through a wall right now. And it's because of not Ben Johnson, and it's not because of Aaron Glenn. And even though those 2 guys are amazing coaches and they're going to do great things in Chicago and New York, but they're going to run through a wall because of Dan Campbell. And one of those guys that is a true believer in his leadership is Jared Goff. I mean, he was a throw in to that trade, right? Just a guy like, yeah, okay, go ahead and take Jared Goff as well, and he's going to be our bridge quarterback to the next best thing, and the guy that's going to allow us to get to, not the same old Lions. But the reality is he's become the guy, and not only has he become the guy, but he's an MVP candidate, and he is becoming elite. I mean, dare I say it? I mean, is he an elite quarterback right now?
The problem is that I think we've hit a case in the NFL that the Tier 1 is a lot more exclusive than it has been, but the Tier 2 at least has a higher floor and a higher ceiling. Like, we have had, though, 2 straight games of bad Goff recently. Mm-hmm. One in Green Bay and one in the Washington Commanders game. There's really in the playoff game, the divisional game, which saw them get thoroughly trounced. So there is a case of, bad Goff that does happen, but I do think that when he has time to throw, it's very good for him. I would also say he has got an incredible amount of IQ to how he calls the game, to how he breaks down, identifies defenses, and changes things to react when that pressure is on him. He is adaptable. He can make the throws. He can run your offense. That is everything you need. I think there is this archetype, this belief that you can only win with the tier 1 guys, and history does kind of prove you out in a lot of cases. In a lot of cases, the Super Bowl winners are the tier 1 guys of Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Patrick Mahomes, etc., etc. On the other hand, if you have a very good roster like the Lions do, you do need at least that tier 2 guy to run things like a Jalen Hurts, or in this case, a Jared Goff. There's different strengths to him. I still think that ultimately the Lions will be capped by Jared Goff just because he isn't the tier 1 guy. And I don't think he can ever evolve into becoming it because I've seen what his floor is. That said, I want to talk about Dan Campbell because, yes, the narrative for a lot of the offseason, including into the season, was about what he would be without his coordinators. And I got to give a lot of credit to John Morton on what they did for that game and how they've kind of embraced a more standard West Coast offense, which I think is fantastic for them. But Dan Campbell knows what he wants to run. Ultimately, at the end of the day, he knows his identity. It's not just the motivation, which is a huge factor. Don't get me wrong. You guys touched on it entirely. It's a huge factor. But I think it's also, he knows how he wants to run. He had a half a season or so calling plays. He understands what his offense needs to do. His aggression on 4th down is not a factor of his OCs. That's from him. And I think he understands that aggression, not in being blind about it, but also in, like, it's smart. The numbers constantly pan out and say the Lions are making the right call on 4th down at a higher clip than anyone else in the National Football League. And part of what I mean by what he means on offense, too, is, and this gets us into, I think, what you guys want to talk about with the offensive play calling. There was, I believe, in just at the start of the 4th quarter in that Ravens game, there was the fullback option where Jared Goff gets the ball out to Amon-Ra St. Brown, who pitches it out to Jahmyr Gibbs, who sweeps in for the touchdown. That is a heady play for a lot of reasons. Number one is that it's a very rugby play. It gets back to kind of the origins of the sport pre-World War II and kind of like how football was being run. But on the other hand, someone pointed this out, and I'm trying to remember who, but someone went back through the tape and found out, that is a play the Saints ran when Dan Campbell was the assistant head coach to Sean Payton back in 2018, 2019 or so. And not only that, that is a play Dan Campbell ran himself when he was a tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. Like, that's what I mean when I say he has an idea of what he wants to play. This was always my thesis for a long time when I talked about this, is that former NFL players, guys who actually have starting experience in the NFL and are smart about football, they can call just as well as guys who have come up through those ranks of the quality assistants and everything. Dan Campbell knows what he wants this team to be and has been pure about that for all of these years.
And if you watch the St. Brown podcast or we listen to that, they refer to that specific play, and they said that play has been in for years.
Yes.
Right? This isn't like they just pulled this thing, and started repping it this week for the Ravens. They've had that play in since Jahmyr has been drafted, and they've been running that play in practice week in and week out. And Amon-Ra jokes about it. He's like, like, we're going to run that thing again this week. And he's like, oh, this is going to be the week we're running it, right? Because you said, we're never going to run that play. This is going to be the week we run it. And here it is.
Just orchestrated beautifully. And also the 4th and 2, late in the game, the longer pass to Amon-Ra. I mean, the Lions spent 3 hours setting that play up. The entire game, the Lions motioned St. Brown from the wide side to the inside to help with blocking. The entire game. Did that probably 10 plus times over the course of the game. Even on the same drive, I think they they did that two different times. So everybody saw that. Marlon Humphrey did too. And Marlon Humphrey is coming in, and they assume that Amon-Ra is going to crash block. And they just worked on setting that play up, and they could have kept that in their back pocket for next week, the following week. But this was the right time. It was raw, no hesitation. They orchestrated beautifully, and they have the brass cojones to make that throw. It was a perfectly thrown ball, a perfect route. We've seen a lot of Amon-Ra and Jared Goff with just exceptional timing. And I would say, you talk about tiers with quarterbacks. I would say with chemistry between quarterbacks and wide receiver, Amon-Ra and Jared Goff have tier 1 chemistry.
Oh, perfect. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a top 5 wide receiver to me. I understand he doesn't run the fun go route that results in a bomb like Justin Jefferson, but he does everything there. But also that play that you're talking about, that 4th and 2 play, highlights again just how damn flexible everyone is. I think I was watching a clip of like Jamar Chase just trying to make a business decision, not getting it, which granted that game was completely out of play, totally understand that, but compare that to what the Lions do where they've been running out 2 tight end sets through that game where they've got both Brock Wright and Sam Laporta, and both those guys can block. Both those guys can block, and they were talking about on a, I think it was Marcus Spears was talking about just how hard that is when you've got additional personnel that can block, because ultimately at the end of the day on the offensive line, it is a numbers game. And if you have more blockers, you are probably going to win just because of the amount of man you can throw at them. And that play right there, that 4th and 2 illustrates that, because I was watching again where Amon-Ra goes in that pre-snap motion and Isaac Tisslaw is like lined up right next to him. The rookie Isaac Tisslaw, the one that they went up for, and he throws that block on it wasn't Humphreys. It was I think it was Humphreys, because I think he drew the defensive holding on that play. I could be completely wrong. Please forgive me if I am not. But yes, it was on. So Tisslaw ended up, I think, taking a defender, going inside, taking a defender, turning his back like he's going to catch the play, which continues to just throw out misdirection. And there's nothing they can do about it at that point because Amon-Ra is gone. And you're like sailing that ball over the head of the defender at that point for 5 yards after completion for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like that's beautiful, and it's again just showing what this team can do when you've got guys who will throw blocks, who just will play this style of just an extremely team forward style of football, which once again goes back to the Dan Campbell philosophy.
And not only the Dan Campbell philosophy, but like the true blood of Detroit, right? And so he embodies, if you go back to the working man, the Pistons of the 80s and 90s, the Red Wings before they like paid every player in order to come there. Just ultimately the Detroit mantra of we are blue collar workers. We're here. We're going to grind it out. We're going to be the working men. So Dan Campbell's the right guy for this job. So
kind of the Detroit versus everybody philosophy that is it's not just a phrase. It's kind of been the calling card of the city. So ground game dominance, trench dominance. You talk about Montgomery 151, 2 touchdowns, Gibbs 67, 2 touchdowns, both also effective in the passing game. But Brian, do you want to touch a little bit on offensive line and the dominance the Lions had in the offensive line?
I mean, look at the grades, the PFF grades of that offensive line. Guys like Penei Sewell, who are scoring PFF grades that are above anyone else in the history of PFF, right? And Tate Ratledge, a rookie, getting in the 90s. This is seeing a drastic bell curve from the game 1 to game 3. And Hank Fraley has got to be one of the guys that we give a lot of accolades to. So got to give him accolades.
I know, especially after. Oh, sorry.
All you, Chris.
Okay, I did want to add on to that real quickly on the difference between game 1 and now. Was something that I think John Morton spoke about. I remember we talked with Jonathan Vilma about this as well. But there were the communication issues were real in game one. Morton spoke about it after the game and said they were easily correctable. Vilma spoke about in regards to things like when Frank Ragnow was the center, there was a lot of unspoken communication he had with Graham Glasgow that Graham had to teach down to two young guards on both of his sides, both in Christian Mahogany, who basically is a rookie as far as I am concerned, in spite of his starts last year, and Tate Ratledge, who is a rookie. And I feel like the Morton was correct. These seem like easily correctable things, and these guys are working a lot more on the same page in these last two games now. I will say on the case that the Ravens is, from the national side, there is some attention being given to that the Ravens defense might just be broken. There's been a lot of injuries for them. I think that's kind of a natural reaction when you start to see a team like the Ravens give up 38 points. And to be honest, that touchdown at the end of the game made this seem like a much closer game than it was. But, look, the Lions have now walloped two teams for about 90 points in 2 weeks. And I don't think any of that can really be taken away and just said, oh, those are just bad defenses you're walloping up on. Maybe in the case of the Bears, but the Bears also got right a little bit against the Cowboys, although the Cowboys will make anyone look right. Look, this is the struggle of September football. Because, I mean, as you guys have probably noticed, things change a lot week to week, especially in September. Once you get out of September, we kind of know what you are. But in September, because of how short the preseason is, but I think I can take away, if anything, that just by watching communication on the line with Ratledge, watching Ratledge's PFF score go up, watching Penei Sewell go up as well, especially when he doesn't have to deal with Micah Parsons just completely destroying him, does kind of indicate to me like, yeah, this is probably more – the last two games are more right. Like, I had some reservations on beating up on the Bears, but also beating up on the Ravens, regardless of how their defense is starting to fall apart, is still pretty damn good.
And you know what? This next week is going to be a very good test. Offensive line versus a defensive line. And, you know, Warren Buffett's got a great quote. You know, I'm a quote guy, so going back a lot of years. And I think this really suits the offensive line very well because to be a good offensive line, you need cohesiveness. You need to teach things down. And you can't teach things down just by telling somebody. You got to go through experience. You got to make mistakes, see the film. But Warren Buffett said, you know, you can't have a baby in 1 month by getting 9 different women pregnant. Some things just take time. And that's Hank Fraley's message. It's just like, hey, we have a young interior offensive line. This is going to take a little bit of time. But this team is not built for week 3. It's not built for week 1. This team is going to be built for a Super Bowl run, and I think that's what they're geared for. You want to put a bow on that, Brian? Or
let's move on.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the defense, and then we're going to get into the preview of next week. But one thing that stood out was 7 sacks on Lamar, and I think they kind of figured out a little bit of a recipe on how to contain a Tier 1 elite quarterback. That was just a showing, and there's a couple guys that maybe you want to highlight a little bit.
Well, I mean, the reality is Shepard had a plan, and it was executed very, very well. Having a spy on Lamar, having that late ad in his scrambles was genius. And you know, having those defensive linemen and be able to maintain rushing lanes. They didn't get off too far, but also allowing guys like Hutch to try to do his thing in order to get some pressures and to make him uncomfortable. And we're going to talk about, you know, the Thierry and Arnold's and the back half and some of their struggles, but the reality is this was a team effort, and they performed very, very well.
Just like I think the defense under Aaron Glenn really indicated they came from a defensive backs background, the defense under Kelvin Shepard really indicates his linebacker background. First off, Jack Campbell and Derek Barnes were phenomenal in this game.
Yep.
Like his work with the linebackers is why he is now defensive coordinator, and it really showed for it in this game. But you mentioned it there. You mentioned it there, Brian. Like I think when Aaron Glenn was the defensive coordinator, there was a lot of emphasis on when he was going to use blitz pressure from the DBs, especially from the safeties. In this case, in the case of Kelvin Shepherd, his adaptability on how he uses the linebackers between these last two games is what really set him apart for me. Number one, because, like, as you said, a spy is something that I don't think I've seen the Lions run for an incredibly long time. But first off, because I don't think they've had the linebackers to be able to have a spy. They just haven't had good linebackers, period, since DeAndre Levy, which was like damn near 10 years ago at this point.
Right.
God bless Kyle Van Noy. He wasn't great with the Lions, but he's, didn't see him in this game, unfortunately.
Right.
I think, you want to talk about a very understated guy, journeyman across the league. Kyle Van Noy's been great, Super Bowl champion. Yeah. But at the same time, like, you watched how the linebackers and also how he was aligning the defensive line, they were also cutting off any escape routes for Lamar Jackson. Not even just to sit there as the spy, which is basically like that mid-level safety, quasi-safety, but also in that, like, you're not even giving him a chance to run anywhere with where the edges are either. Like, nor are you opening up the center for him just to park the Red Seas and get the hell out of there. Like, you're eating up everything. You're watching guys who are doing a little bit of jumping and getting vertical, but also not overstretching themselves doing so, to make sure it's confused up front for him, but there's nowhere for him to go. And I think that, more than anything, is what really put this game apart. Like, yeah, you gave up a bunch of points, but if I take away that garbage time touchdown, what's this? Is this a 14-point game? Like, that's... You kind of outclassed him here. I mean, Lamar Jackson's going to get his. Mark Andrews looked great early on, but you could tell by the end they were kind of worn down from this. And like, their run game was completely just crushed, which we know the Lions to do. But last time against the Ravens, that wasn't the case. And Derrick Henry, I think, only got 50 yards. And as we just talked about, Lamar Jackson couldn't go damn near anywhere, which made them one-dimensional, which is how the Lions, through all of Dan Campbell's tenure, have beaten teams, by making their offenses one-dimensional and causing them to make mistakes.
And remember, of those, I think 50 or 60 yards of Derrick Henry's, 25 of them came on one run. So, I mean, if you look at what they did to that man, I feel like that guy's he's almost broken, right? I mean, he felt, you saw him on the sidelines after that fumble. He was not in a good mindset.
He's having a fumble a game at this point too.
Yes.
And like, much like the Bills game, that came at such a critical juncture as well. I can understand him being incredibly frustrated, but also at the same time, like, I'm just kind of amazed on like what little ground they gave to the Ravens. I don't think anyone had a long over, like, I think the longest pass was to Justice Hill for like 37 yards. But like there was, they didn't let, I mean, for as much struggles as there is for Terry and Arnold, nobody was really taking the top off of this defense. No. And at the same time, like, there'd be some fourth down plays where they would just button up, and I'm just like, oh God, it's the Ravens offense. They'll probably figure something else, and they didn't. They'd get stumped. They get stuffed by this. Like, this, not only are the Lions getting good at running fourth downs on offense, they're getting good at stopping them on the defense.
Yeah. Chris, you waxed some eloquence on the linebackers. That is just, we don't talk enough about how well the linebackers are playing. Obviously, the defensive line is playing awesome. Interior is getting better, and that will continue to get better and better as guys get healthy on the defensive line. And I think the secondary will come along a little bit. But to Chris's point, I think it's just a little bit of a different coaching style, and it's going to take a little bit of time for them to adapt.
And you looked at what Aaron Glenn did from the secondary down, right? I mean, that was kind of his mindset. And Chris, you talked about it already. But Shep is looking from the middle out, and I think that there's something to say about knowing, knowing what a linebacker does and knowing from that middle out both the pass coverage as well as the blitz packages or defensive, angles that we're expecting. There's a different mindset and a different angle and a different look from the linebacker perspective than there is from the DB perspective. So and I think that ultimately knowing what a defense does, that's that's going to help our defense in the long run. So
I'm very curious to see what he'll do to other teams because I think he had a real good game plan against Lamar Jackson, and I want to see what that game plan looks like. I mean, unfortunately, we won't see
against Joe Flacco.
I was going to say I kind of wish Joe Burrow was still playing to see how he would deal with a threat like that. But at the same time, he's out. But you will have to deal with Patrick Mahomes. You will have to deal with Baker Mayfield. You will have to deal with Jaden Daniels and Jalen Hurts. Like, there's Matthew Stafford. There's going to be a lot of dynamic quarterbacks you will play this year, and I am very fascinated to see how he tackles them because each of those guys are very different from Lamar Jackson too.
100%.
And like you're going to have to be adaptable if you intend to play in January and February.
Well, Daniels tore him up last year, obviously. Jackson's torn up in the past. So I think those two, you can kind of play a similar game plan, but there are just a ton of good quarterbacks the Lions are going to face, to your point. So let's put a bow on that, and let's talk a lot about kind of the game preview. The Lions are playing the Browns. We're recording this on Thursday night. Obviously, Chris is in California. I don't know. It could still be Wednesday in California. I'm not sure on time zones, how that all works. But
just 3 hours. Just 3 hours.
Okay, just 3 hours. Okay.
Just enough to make
carry the one.
Just enough to make primetime games when they end feel acceptable rather than, oh, God, I have to go to bed.
Right.
Yeah. So, Chris, you grew up in Toledo. Quick question: Were you an Indians fan or a Tigers fan?
Detroit through and through.
Okay, good.
My uncle got me into the Tigers, and just all Detroit sports kind of flowed from there. Except the only thing wasn't like the Michigan universities or anything. I got my master's at USC, and that's what I'll do for college. Yeah.
Well, that's better than Ohio State, where it could have been. So
we won't hold that against you. Yeah. So it's Thursday night. We just kind of right before this podcast watched the Tigers finish up a pretty rough series with the Guardians now, the former Indians.
We don't need to talk
who have
about
kind
the Tigers. We don't need to talk about the Tigers.
It's kind of a whole Cleveland week, right? You had 3 big games against the Guardians, and they took 2 of 3, and then we have the Browns storming into town. So I kind of feel like it was a salvage to win today, but the Lions need to kind of avenge this whole week for the Detroit-Cleveland rivalry going in this weekend. So obviously you both are following this. It's been is this just real quickly on the Tigers? Is this in Cleveland? Is this an incredible run by Cleveland, or is this just a incredible epic stumble by the Tigers, or is it both and they're kind of happening at the same time?
The Tigers had a 12.5 game lead in the middle about a month ago in the AL Central. This is an incredible stumble by the Tigers, and I will not hear otherwise. Like, the Guardians have come on very well, and I'm not going to take anything away from them at the end of the day. However, I think I know where you're going with this. You want to make this as like an energy between Detroit and Cleveland right now, and I'm just not going to buy that because like baseball is an inherently just evil sport. I've decided. And I'm probably going to spend this playoffs either rooting for the Mariners or joining my Dodgers friends in agony and hatred for very, very much so like Eagles fans, in that they don't think they're going to win, even though they have every opportunity to win, and then they win, and then it's all fine. Sorry, where were we? Oh, right, Cleveland, the Browns. No, look, I understand the Browns have a little bit of energy coming off them because they beat the Packers. I think that loss says a lot more about the Packers than it does about the Cleveland Browns. Because we'll forget that the week prior, that same very good Cleveland Browns defense gave up 40 points to the Baltimore Ravens. The Lions just thrashed around in their own building. And also, this game is being played in Detroit, in Ford Field, where the Lions are very good. Very, very good at home.
Chris, to be fair on that Baltimore Cleveland game, a lot of those points were kind of garbage time. Cleveland was holding them pretty close through about 3/4 of that football game, and the Ravens kind of piled on towards the end of that game.
But the levee does break at some point. And when you're giving up 21 points in the fourth quarter, that really indicates that the levee really broke for them. If that's the kind of pressure that the Ravens put up, I think that blueprint is there for the Lions to put up that pressure as well. I know what you're saying, and I understand the fears about their defense at the end of the day, but I also think that game between the Browns and the Packers underscored that a lot of this Packers juggernaut right now is coming from their defense when Micah Parsons is on the field. The EPA per play, all those numbers show once again that Micah transforms a defense. Whether we like it or not, I had Lions fans poo-pooing the idea that he would fix the Packers defense. Between two teams now, the difference on their metrics when he's on the field versus when he's off it cannot be understated. But we've kind of seen this from Jordan Love before, right? Like, you'll have a good game, and I don't even think he was that great against the Lions when they beat when the Packers beat Detroit in Green Bay. And he'll coast on it a little bit. And that game, like, I'm sorry, you only put up, like, I feel like if the Packers are the Super Bowl contender, they'll be able to handle a defense like that for more than 13 points, especially when more than 10 points, excuse me, especially when there's no real offense for the Cleveland Browns to speak of. And look, those 21 points that they gave up in the fourth quarter to the Ravens indicates once again that that's a defense that's being asked to stand on its head. And the Lions kind of just did that to the Ravens and their own if the Lions can, one thing we didn't talk about from that Ravens-Lions game was the 11-minute drive in the second that ate up like nearly all of the second quarter.
Loved it.
Like, you don't come back from that level of exhaustion. You just don't. And when the Lions decide they are going to wear you down like a pencil being put into a sharpener and you just won't take it out of the sharpener, there's not going to be much left by the fourth quarter. Like,
there's just an eraser left, right? After the end of that, right?
Metal. Yeah. Like, I'm not trying to sound hyper confident here, but like I every game is different, sure, but I also think on paper it's really easy to pump up the Browns defense right now versus like, yo, they just kind of got a Packers offense that will sometimes pumpkin itself. And I really do think the Lions are equipped to take care of this Browns defense. I really do.
So with that being said, let's just kind of talk about how this game opens up on paper, right? I don't know, Chris, if you're a point spread guy, but Brian and I like to talk a little bit about that. Also, we are not a podcast for gambling advice. If you have a problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. But this game opened up at 8.5 points as a Lions favorite. It's moved to 10 now as a Lions favorite. Does that feel generous? And also the over-under is right around 44.5, which is indicating that they think it's going to be about a 27-17 game.
I know from working, one of the shows I work on the weekends is Countdown, which is a gambler show. And what I do know from listening to bookmakers is that people in Michigan love to bet on the Lions. These guys get exposed a lot to Lions money, especially in Michigan, where Detroit sports fans come in and bet on their team very heavily. I remember all last year, a lot like listening to the two bookmakers we have on there being like, we really need the other side of the Lions right now because we are exposed pretty hard on them. And seeing it go up, 2.5 points. It moved up 2.5. That's a tremendous.
It moved up 1.5 points. Yeah.
1.5, excuse me. Okay, that's a little less movement than I anticipated. If it was 2.5, I would have been holy boats. That is a lot for a NFL game. But I also think it's fair. Again, we kind of moved away from being questions about the Lions, and I think really Monday Night Football kind of opened up a lot more answers for the Lions. 44 is fascinating, but like, it's tough, right? Because now we've got 90 points in two games with the Lions that they've scored themselves. On the other hand, you've got a good defense with the Browns, and I would say you've got a defense with the Lions who is good, and they will eat up an offense, the Browns. That total is tough. That total is right about where I expect it to be. I think I'm sorry, once again, is it Lions minus 10?
The Lions are right now.
Yeah.
Lions are
10-point
minus
favorites.
10
That is,
and
yeah,
no hook.
no hook. Okay, that is books begging people to take the Browns. That is books begging, especially with no hook. That is begging them to take the Browns. By the way, the Browns probably giving us one of the funniest. I don't gamble a ton. I put in like a bet maybe once every 3 years. The Browns giving us. No, I'm sorry. It wasn't the Browns. It was a different game. Ignore me. I was thinking Eagles Rams. That blocked field goal return for a touchdown that like destroyed Rams plus 3.5. Everyone was talking about that. Excuse me. This is my brain. This is why people call me adequate a lot. But either way, that's 10 feels like they're begging you to take the Browns here, and 44 kind of is, I would say, a pretty good number, pretty damn good number. Probably goes over, but pretty damn good.
What's your take, Bri?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the Lions are going to take the Browns lightly. I think that the Browns beating the Packers even help emphasize how there's no way that you're going to go into the Browns and think that things are just going to roll smoothly for you. You're going to go in with focus, and you're going to go in with a mindset that you want to destroy them and move forward, and that they're just in your way from the next game. So in my thoughts, it's going to be pedal to the metal. They're on the gas, and things are going to continue to roll.
So let me kind of give you little numbers let's talk about the Browns defense, all right? So they allow 57 yards a game on the ground, best in the NFL. They are also fourth best in the NFL through the air. They are statistically, they're the league's best defense. How can the Lions attack this defense by giving up so little on the ground and also being able to be pretty good through the air, though they have some potential injuries in the interior line, and they have young secondary, and maybe that's a way they can expose the Browns. But Brian, do you kind of have a take here on what to expect the Lions offense versus the Cleveland Browns defense?
Absolutely. I mean, I think right now Amon-Ra is probably going to be the guy that you're going to lean on the most, and you're going to continue to try to stretch the defense as best you can with JMO. You're going to get layers to your passing game with Amon-Ra and Sam Laporta and JMO over the top, and I think Amon-Ra is going to feast. So I think that's kind of where they're going to lean a little bit. So you're going to look at 9-10 catches for Amon-Ra, but they're going to continue to establish the run. They're not going to go away from it. They are a running team. They love to wear teams down. And you looked even at the beginning of the Ravens game, the Detroit Lions running attack was not efficient. I mean, they weren't good to start the game, but as you got into the second quarter, and then you got into the third quarter, and then you got in the fourth quarter, that's when you started seeing huge chunk plays, and you saw guys like Tate Ratledge railroading guys. You saw guys like Penei Sewell railroading guys, and that's when you really saw the defensive line wear down. So this is what we want to do. We want to establish runs. We want to wear teams down, and even though you have guys like Myles Garrett who are scary, in the pass game, I think he's going to get his at times, and he's going to give us a handful at times. But I think overwhelmingly the weapons that the Lions have is going to be too much for the Browns.
So Chris talked a little bit about Micah Parsons. I think Micah Parsons affects the game a tremendous amount. And so does Aiden Hutchinson, but also so does Myles Garrett, right? And I didn't mean to cut you off, Chris. You got to take here, but that is those are some of the premier defensive players that can really disrupt a game.
Yeah, I think the difference there is just in where Micah Parsons comes from. It's the flexibility of his attack because he's coming from the linebacker. He is an edge linebacker. that he's just coming from that there. And I think the Lions just had no real answer for that because he doesn't need to line up and just have to deal with Penei Sewell the entire game. He could go, he did go after Penei Sewell and won, but like he's got the flexibility in what he does. Garrett is on the defensive line, which limits a lot of his flexibility. He's got 4 sacks already this season though, which is ultimately like, yikes, what do you do about that? But that's ultimately what it's going to be for the Lions. They're going to live and die on how much the offensive line protects Jared Goff. That is ultimately what this comes down to, no matter how other way you split it, the run game, whatever, because we saw what happens when Jared Goff does get sacked after a few times. He does start to panic a little bit and start to dump off when he doesn't have anything. I think he's calmed down since that game 1, but you do have to take care of Myles Garrett. Ultimately, that's basically where this game starts and stops, is basically how do you take care of the pass rush from the Cleveland Browns. If your offensive line can handle it, great, fantastic, we're good. If you can't, that's when the game starts to get a little muddy.
Do you think because, and Brian, maybe this is you can start here, but do you think that, Lions are a team that are going to roll the dice on 4th downs, and the whole league's kind of adopting that strategy, but the Lions are still kind of leading the charge there.
They are the best at it. It's not just leading the charge. They are still the best at it, period.
They are very, very good. But when you play a team that doesn't have an offense that scares you a ton, you got a Joe Flacco who's getting spelled with Dylan Gabriel. Do you think that one thing that you might see different is they maybe gamble less and they lean into maybe punting it on 4th and 3, and they just say, you know what, we're going to put this back in our defense hands because we know that they can't score on us and we don't need to turn this into a track meet?
Nope. I think that Dan Campbell is going to continue to do Dan Campbell things. Whether you think that they're going to punt because they're not afraid of what the Browns offense is going to do, I think that still holds true with going forward on 4th down. I think that they're still going to be able to go for it on 4th down and not be afraid of what the Browns offense is going to do, whether it's on their 30 or threatening into their zone. So I think that Dan Campbell is going to stay true to what he does because that's what he does, and he wants to establish confidence in his players. He wants to establish, continue to have the culture that this is not abnormal for us. We are not going to be fazed by 4th down play calls. This is what we do. So and they're going to continue to do that moving forward. Whether it's the Browns or it's going to be the Cincinnati Bengals or it's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs, they're going to go for it on 4th down when the timing's right. So,
Chris, are you going to co-sign that or?
Yeah, look, I don't think there's a lot of weapons that the Browns have that really scare me right now. I'm just kind of pulling through their roster again. I think the Lions can handle someone like Quinshon Judkins. Jerry Jeudy is still got something in him, but he is not going to be any of the receivers you just fought in the Baltimore game. I'm very high on Harold Fannin Jr., but he is a rookie. And I think he's splitting time with David Njoku at this point. If I'm not mistaken, I really liked him in the draft. I know the Lions weren't exactly in the market for a tight end, but I got to watch him playing at Bowling Green, and he amazed me pretty well at what he could do. So I think he'll be good for them in the future. Maybe not here. Is this? I'm just hold on one second while I look this up just to make sure I'm not completely insane. This is a bit of a reunion game. A reunion game. You are going to see Cornelius Lucas on the line for the Cleveland. Okay, you guys remember Cornelius Lucas? Good, good. I just wanted to make sure someone remembered Cornelius Lucas. Good on him. Undrafted, and he's been playing in the league for now 11 seasons?
Right.
That's damn. Did his mom write you an email saying, "Hey, let's get some pub on the pod here," and then you 3 guys might be the last 3 guys that can.
This is the only way I win Immaculate Grid is when I see it was when I recognize former Detroit Lions on other teams. Half the time it is guys like Cornelius Lucas that gets me good grades on Immaculate Grid.
I love it. So when you're looking at those stats, one thing is we're kind of transitioning to Cleveland's offense. So Chris, you kind of touched on it. They're 29th in the NFL in running the ball right now. They average 2.7 yards a run. Though Quinshon Judkins just got reintroduced after they're kind of looking over his domestic violence issue, and then that might rear its ugly head later on. But since he's been inserted in the lineup, he's been averaging 5.5 yards per rush, and actually looks a little bit like a bright spot overall for the Cleveland rushing attack. Maybe he's one to watch, and then passing the ball, Cleveland's 16th in the NFL, which is, right in the middle of the pack. Part of the reason is because they're so bad at running the ball. They're having to throw a ton. And they do have, to Chris's point, they have two tight ends that are able to be featured in that offense. One, I'm old enough to remember when you got drafted in the NFL as a tight end. It was like 2 or 3 years till you were able to make an impact. And that's what I was just told. Brandon Pettigrew, don't expect anything for a while, and Eric Ebron, and I have PTSD from those names. But it wasn't really something that you expected from a tight end. And now you can be a middle round tight end draft pick with elite athleticism, and you can have game breaking days like Harold Fannin Jr. has had. So it's a lot of rambling about running and throwing. Do you kind of have any takes on how Detroit's going to kind of defend this weekend?
Yeah, it's good you bring up the tight ends just because, look, on the case of the running backs, the Lions are very good at one thing, and they will always remain very good at one thing, and that's stopping the run. That is what they, when they wake up in the morning, the first thing they do is stop the run. Notre Dame's got to play like a champion today, sign that they all slap as they're going down the tunnel. The Detroit Lions probably have 30 signs that all say stop the run. That's what they do. That's what they do. That's all they want to do is stop the run because it's the first thing in their mind. But I mean, look, this is a Detroit Lions defense that did give up 2 touchdowns to Mark Andrews, who is washed. There's no nice way around this. Mark Andrews is old. Mark Andrews is not a guy that I expected to have the kind of game that Mark Andrews had against the Detroit Lions. So when you're talking about Harold Fannin Jr., who again is a rookie, but has 136 receiving yards already in that rookie career with an offense that is not great at all, that I think he is averaging he's gotten 15 receptions, so he's averaging something like 9 yards per reception. It's pretty good how they are using him. Nothing is terribly long for him. He's not going to take the top off you, obviously because he's a tight end. But look, you're just lucky he's a rookie right now. You're lucky that you can I agree with you, and I feel like a lot of this stuff about tight ends being better right out of the gate comes from just, I feel like college kind of caught up on how we're supposed to use tight ends. They're a lot closer to the pro schemes now. There's a lot more synthesis between the two. But he's the main threat. I would say even over Jerry Jeudy, I am more worried about someone like Harold Fannin Jr. The good news is again, that I think they still want to treat Njoku as another one of their tight ends they want to use. So hopefully you won't see terribly much of him, but they seem to be they seem to be understanding just how damn good he is in that offense. But it is still an offense that is capped and has scored all of let me just carry the 2 here for a second. They've scored all of, yes, I have this right, 46 points in 3 games. Mm-hmm. That's the high and low of it. You can divide by 3 if you wish.
Brian, you got anything on kind of?
I mean, Mark Andrews is a great point. I mean, he was the one guy that did feast a little bit on the Lions defense, but you think about when you game plan and so on, what do you want to take away? They wanted to take away Derrick Henry. They wanted to take away Zay Flowers, and they did those 2 things. So what they didn't take away was Mark Andrews, and that was the one thing that the Ravens the Ravens offense was able to get going. I mean, Lamar Jackson didn't have a great day running the ball or scrambling. He still got his in regards to some yards, and he's still an efficient elite quarterback. But you look into the Browns, and they don't have a Zay Flowers, they don't have a Derrick Henry. So is a tight end group something that we're going to focus on more to take away versus a Judy? So I mean, you just question what is going to be your focus and what's going to be your game plan as they continue to ramp up for Sunday. So
one point I'd like to add is one of the things I did see in coverage leading up to this is that you can expect, and I do believe the Lions, this is not a knock about Terry and Arnold, but they are going to start trying to take some snaps from Arnold and giving them that to Amik Robertson.
Mm-hmm.
I think that
I
says
heard
a lot
that today.
more. Yeah, I think it has a lot more to do with Amik Robertson. I do believe them. Terry and Arnold has had some struggles this early season. I think they're trying to be a little polite about it, but we all saw what Amik did down the stretch with the Detroit Lions in December and November when they were battling a lot of injuries in 2024. They have a lot of trust in Amik Robertson, and I think him getting a lot more play probably does help when it comes to stopping some of these guys too. So we'll see.
And it's going to be a balancing act, right? I mean, they do not want to take too much away from TA. They don't want him to feel defeated. They want him to have a mindset that he's still the guy. But they also want to win games, so they're going to do what they can in order to put themselves in the best position. And Amik might be the guy that allows them to put themselves in the right position. I mean, he's a dog, right? I mean, I loved hearing his quote, after the Minnesota game last year, where you can't bury a guy who was born from the dirt, right? I mean, I love that. You get fired up with guys who have that much passion and want to win and are willing to give their best for a team like this. So, I mean, I want to see Amik succeed, but at the same time, I don't want to see TA be demoralized by a reduction in role either. So
to kind of put a bow on what I hear from you guys, what I see is you have Joe Flacco. He's older than me, which is kind of scary. He's kind of a Jared Goff pocket passer, needs really good protection. He's a good game manager, makes pretty good decisions. You have an elite Lions defensive line, very good linebackers, and they're working things out in the secondary. It just seems like I have a hard time picturing Cleveland really scoring a lot of points against the Lions.
It's tough, right? As I said, it's been 46 points over 3 games, and I'm not going to divide by 3 because I just finished off the zombie in my on the other hand, yes, Joe Flacco is old. It's funny you call him a game manager because I always remember back in 2012, 2011, 2013 when he was in vogue, it was always a lot more about his gunslinger arm. It was his ability to just really try to take the top off. The one image that's always indelible in my mind was the AFC Championship, and I think 2012. Well, I think it would have been 2013 for that Super Bowl against the 49ers. But it was against the Broncos, and by all means the Broncos with Peyton Manning should have gone to the Super Bowl, and it's busted coverage, and he just takes the top off them, and that's the play that buries the Broncos deep and throws a little dirt on the grave. But that is also back when Barack Obama was the president of the United States of America. It's been a really long time. Joe Flacco's been on probably 4 or 5 teams since then. I think we fall in love with guys like Joe Flacco because of the narrative. Because much like a Gardner Minshew, you see a limited amount of success for these guys. But ultimately, the more they come out and the more they get exposed out here, the less that return is. And I understand the Browns don't really know or seem to have the usual dysfunction about Dylan Gabriel and Shadur Sanders and who should start where and when's the right time for all of this. And Kevin Stefanski seems to be in battle in all of this for a coach of the year who really shouldn't be, but he's been put in this awful situation by the organization. I don't think Joe Flacco's ideal. And I think that Joe Flacco makes the kind of mistakes that can be feasted on by guys like this Lions safety crew. Like Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, I feel one of them is going to come down with an interception. There might be more because as much as we talk about the good Joe Flacco games where he's managing the game, we also need to talk about the bad Joe Flacco games where he's turning the ball over multiple times, usually by his arm and not because of a strip sack fumble. Like that's the yang of Joe Flacco, and I think that deserves as much attention. And I'm not saying that to be a hater about Joe Flacco. I think his career has been something phenomenal from a guy who has a Super Bowl ring and celebrated it by getting it chicken tenders at McDonald's. Really the everyman, the everyman of NFL quarterbacks out there, smoking Joe. But at the same time, like, again, much like Gardner Minshew, you have to acknowledge the music. He's old, and he makes a
no doubt. You're not a hater. You just crush a lot, right? And let me remind you that Father Time is always undefeated, right? Absolutely. So Brian and I go way back, right? We've coached baseball together, we've played softball together, and you referenced 2012. And I want to remind you that we're closer to 2035 than we are to 2012. So it's a big gap. So back in 2012, when I was playing softball with Brian, I could put him in center field and he's tracking balls down. In 2025, he's our catcher. Okay, so a lot happens in the course of time where Joe Flacco went from taking the top off of defense to trying to get the top off his pants. And it's the same type of challenge.
There is a LeVar Arrington II currently playing now at Penn State. Not LeVar Arrington I, who I work with on weekends, a LeVar Arrington II. His son is in college. The other guys who I am working with, like Hushmanzada and Plaxico Burris, are getting their sons into college. Marvin Harrison Jr. is in the league right now. Like, I know it's kind of almost passé to say, oh my God, I'm seeing the sons of players out there, because it's like, yeah, time's undefeated like that. But as long as Joe has made this work, like, I don't know. I feel like I also believe that Tom Brady has ruined our brains when it comes to quarterbacks and how long you're supposed to play. I feel like a guy like Tom Brady going into his, and Aaron Rodgers for that matter, going into their 40s is the exception, not the rule. A lot more quarterbacks look like Russell Wilson, who after 35 fall off that cliff. Joe Flacco is 40. Joe Flacco is 40, and again has gone on multiple. I mentioned Barack Obama. He actually got drafted when George W. Bush was in office. to really stretch this through the political landscape. And since the Baltimore Ravens, he's played for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams. 6 teams, twice, 2 different stints with the Cleveland Browns. So, like, there's a reason why he didn't stay in Baltimore. And, like, I think it's easy to fall in love with a guy like Joe Flacco because the narrative allows us to follow the guy with Joe Flacco. He's the everyman. He wants to fight hard. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I've seen him in games where he just gives up, like, 3 interceptions. And looking at this Lions team, I think this is a Lions team that's going to feast on Joe Flacco.
So what do you think, Rob? What's the final going to be? What's your prediction?
So funny you mentioned that because we're kind of getting to maybe our last little segment. Quick segment is just kind of prediction time. So teeing it off, and hearing Chris, man, I like to bet. My unit's $5, and I like to do a couple of those every week just to kind of have fun, make games interesting that I wouldn't be interested. Yeah, the bankroll's small, bet small, and that's where I'm at. So I'm also kind of anti-chalk, and I like to look at where's the money going, where's the amount of bets going, and where's the money going. And I think Chris said something that kind of piques my interest with Vegas doesn't really care who's going to win. They just want to attract money to one side, and they're getting a lot of lines money, and obviously the line's moving in the other direction, which is a little bit scary to me. So just like last week, Brian, where I was wrong, because I really wanted to take the Lions, but when consensus is jumping on one side so much, I would rather take the other side. So At 10 points is a big number. I'll probably take the Browns, and I'll probably take the under, because if they cover that spread, it's probably going to be a lower number, and the Lions are going to grind them out.
Chris, where you at?
Lions have been very good at covering that spread. That said, garbage time touchdowns are a thing. We did go from the Ravens getting that, touchdown to make the game not look like the laugher it really was at the end of the day. I know a lot of people said that Monday night game was classic, but by the fourth quarter, it was pretty well out of reach for the Ravens. The Lions, it didn't look like the 50 burger beatdown on the Bears, but it was pretty out of reach. Likewise, I kind of consider this to be the same thing. Again, the Lions are really good at home. That has to be underscored, highlighted, and underlined, all at the same time, that they are very good at home. And I think this Lions fan crowd, after a slow start in Green Bay, and then getting the excitement of a 50 burger on the hated Bears and smacking around Caleb Williams, who, by the way, looked a little bit better, but I think that's also a product of playing the Dallas Cowboys, who I know Bomani Jones called the Make-A-Wish defense, because they make all dreams come true. There's going to be a lot of teams that just, you guys like golf, they're going to tee off on the Dallas Cowboys this year, man. They're going to really tee off in the Dallas Cowboys defense. But also that you went into Baltimore on the road and did that. This is going to be a charged up Ford Field. It is a 1 o'clock game, so it's not obviously going to have that, primetime bump. I think Lions are 12-2 in primetime under Dan Campbell, which is unbelievable, and I think has contributed a lot to the reputation of the Detroit Lions among the national crowd, because those games where they're in primetime, everyone's watching them kick ass. But I do think that all factors into this team, who has really gotten a lot of their issues out of the way. Do I see a low-scoring game? Maybe, but at the same time, it's really hard for me to take the under, just because I know what happens when this Lions offense whittles down their defense, because they don't have a stop sign. You had people complaining that they put 50 points on the Bears because, haven't you beaten them enough? And it's it's really hard to stop this thing when it gets going. It's really hard to stop this train when you've really worn them down and Jahmyr Gibbs is breaking free, or Amon-Ra, St. Brown, or J-Mo has a busted coverage that they're just going to feast on. And ultimately, that's what gives me the most faith in the Lions in this game, is that when they get loose, this is a team, the best teams in the NFL take advantage of the mistakes of the other team and forces that other team to make those mistakes as well. We talked a lot about how the safety duo in Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch feast on the mistakes of a opposing offense when you get them down in distance. That was the move under Aaron Glenn. Just get them 3rd and 7 or so, and ask them to throw the ball, and suddenly maybe 30%, 20% of the time, Kirby Joseph's sitting there for a takeaway. Right? It was an opportunistic defense. Much like that on offense, it's an opportunistic offense that's just waiting for you to just get gassed. Just waiting for you. It is a... Humans are, excuse me for a second, biological anthropology here. Humans are, from ancient times, what are called persistence hunters, in that they have more stamina than you. They will injure an animal and then run that animal down until they are exhausted and then finish them off. That is how our ancestors on the plains of Africa were able to live, because they were able to run all day and run down a gazelle until it just was exhausted to death. And I feel like the Detroit Lions emphasize that in how they play offense. Right? It's the 11-minute drive against the Ravens. It is waiting for J-Mo to get free. It is just targeting Amon-Ra St. Brown and just him beating you up. It is David Montgomery as a battering ram against the LA Rams. This is the kind of thing the Lions do well. And as good as an offense as the Browns are, That's going to be their game plan. They want to just beat them down, and that's how they'll win.
I love it. And I'm going to say that at this point, they're not going to score lower than 30 points. They're going to continue the train in which they have already established on the tracks. It is rolling right now. They're going to find their ways in order to feed whatever's working when it comes to the Cleveland Browns, whether that's Amon-Ra, whether that's Sam Laporta, whether that's J-Mo on the field, whether that's David Montgomery battering ram, or whether that's Jahmyr Gibbs getting the edge. And they're going to just feed those individuals, and they're going to, like you said, Chris, wear them down. That offense can't keep up. I mean, it's going to be a 32. It's going to be a 13. I'm taking that spread. So that's me. Maybe me being the Lions homer. But the ultimate is this Lions offense is starting to click, and you are going to see them feast. And that's what I want to see come Sunday.
It'd be ironic if we have a Dylan Gabriel to Harold Fannin garbage touchdown in the fourth quarter for the kind of the backdoor cover, which to Chris's point happens all too often. And Brian, last segment, because we sometimes cut Bill short, and
don't cut Bill short.
We're not going to cut Bill short. So Chris, we do a segment. This podcast was created. Brian's a principal at a local high school, and Bill is a teacher at a local high school, and they started just passing time in the hallways, just talking Lions football. So we got passing time. And Bill, we still have not yet to get on our podcast, but he's a coach of a local team, knows ball, and is also riding the emotional wave of being a fan. So knowing ball and being a fan, he often has very entertaining takes. And we have a quick segment here called Bill's Bullet Points. And Brian, do you kind of want to give us Bill's bullet points for the week?
Sure. I mean, Bill's on a high right now after the Ravens win. Bill is loving the fact that the Lions have taken it to the last two teams, and he does not see him slowing down after going into Cleveland. But he is still worried about our special teams. So I think, if you look at what the special teams have done the last couple of weeks, that's the phase of football that the Lions need to continue to improve on, whether it's the return game, whether it's the cover game, whether it's punting or kicking. We can't kick the ball out of bounds. We can't allow Jake Bates to make more tackles. We have to be able
He's good at it, though.
We have to be able to, cover, the hidden yardage that is the special teams, and they got to get right. So that's where his biggest worry is right now.
I'm not terribly worried about that just because Dave Phipp has shown you just how good he is at this kind of stuff. Like, look, I think they're trying to figure out the dynamic kickoff, which is resulting exactly how the NFL wants it to be. That's making the kickoffs exciting. And that's really where they've really struggled at this point. More than anything is the kickoff coverage. And I just think they'll be able to get that down. Sione Vaki taking a little bit of injury. I haven't seen injury reports yet, so I don't know exactly where he is.
Didn't practice again today, so he did not practice again today.
Oh, and we are recording this on late on a Thursday, so that's not
good.
Yeah. That said, I think they'll be able to get some personnel in there. I don't know if it'll be this game. I haven't seen the projections for the Browns special teams. I do know that I haven't thought about their kicker at all in the major. Can any of you name the kicker? Real quick without looking up? Can any of you name the kicker for the Browns?
I cannot name the kicker.
Okay, because I play multiple fantasy formats and I don't think I've seen him. By the way, their kick returner is. You want to talk about a man from the past. You want to talk about, he's still in the league. Their kick returner is DeAndre Carter.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, another guy who is almost as old as I have been covering the Detroit Lions. Sacramento State's finest.
Yes.
I love it. So Bill is my take on it is he's been on the wagon, he's jumped off the wagon, he's back on the wagon. Now he's nitpicking special teams, right? And that's why we love
exactly where
him.
we want him to be, right? That's where we want him to be.
Special teams are special teams, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, this has been a lot of fun. Chris, can you once again tell the audience, if anybody's still listening at this point, kind of where to find you, where to pick you up, what you're working on one more time, and kind of.
So I am very rarely on X/Twitter anymore at Chris Perfett. I always give that out. I'm a lot more active on Blue Sky these days, which is where I think you guys reached out to me as well.
Yep.
At perfett.bsky.social, where I yak a lot more about things. I am live. There's a Twitch link in my bio on Blue Sky that goes to my Twitch profile, where I am live after every Lions game. Sometimes a little bit later if it's like a 1 o'clock game, just because I'm usually working until like 6:30 Eastern on Sundays. But I do try to go live after every Lions game. I have several projects coming. I can't announce any of them yet, since I departed from Pride of Detroit. However, I'm still committed to Lions coverage. I'm trying to get some writing going. I'm trying to get some podcasts going. I'm trying to work on a few projects when it comes to NFL history, because I think it's extremely important, and because I don't think anyone, even the NFL itself, really does a good job at NFL history. So that's kind of in my wheelhouse as well. Speaking of that Twitch, I also do what I call Tiki Tuesdays, although I haven't had that in a while. I like just yakking about sports. That's ultimately what it comes down to. Freed of Pride of Detroit right now, I just kind of do my own thing. And then, yes, on the weekends, Fox Sports Radios for over 600 affiliates across the United States. I am a technical producer and an update anchor for them. Monday mornings during the Dan Patrick Show and Colin Cowherd, depending on your affiliate, you might hear my voice, depending on who your local radio station is with Fox Sports Radio, because we are doing Monday morning NFL updates from us, and I am kind of the guy who basically tells you that your favorite player is going on IR or having an MRI. Later that day, so that's I'm kind of the voice of Dr. Bones. And otherwise than that, End Zone Radio is one of our Fox Sports Radio shows I do with Steve Hartman. We do a segment called Perfett Picks, where I give them off the walls over-unders. God, what else? I work with Jonas. If you're listening to Fox Sports on a weekend, you're probably going to hear my voice at some point in like a 12-hour window, just because I always have something to yak at someone about.
I love it. And Brian and I need to join you on a Tiki Tuesday at some point. So you haven't done it in a while. Maybe we can resurrect that and get going on that.
Absolutely.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
I mean, for those who's watching on YouTube, I have the Honolulu Blue Tiki mug. Every year I used to come out with the Honolulu Blue Kool-Aid recipe. I think I finally came out with a new one a little bit late right now that uses both tequila and rum. But I am a rum drinker at the end of the day. Rum, speaking of me, I'm a history buff. Rum, especially the tiki movement, is fascinating to me when it comes to the history, especially for guys like Trader Vic and Don the Beachcomber, and these like secret recipes that guys like Beach Bum Barry had to go and like dig up. And ultimately, I can bring it back to the Lions because it is Honolulu Blue. That's ultimately what I have going for me right now. I don't know. Like as an older millennial, I grew up with like last generation of guys who are like, oh, if you're a man, you've got to drink bourbon neat or Jack Daniels, and it's like, no, I really don't. And I feel like also like we've kind of gotten away from it, but like alcohol is kind of the order of the day when it comes to watching football.
Love it. And then Brian, tell us where to follow us and kind of give us our little sign off here.
Absolutely, like and subscribe, do the thing that you know you need to do, and we're on all the major platforms, so check us out. We've branched out to places like TikTok and Instagram, so find us at Passing Time Pod and see where we're at. So
absolutely love it. And this was a really fun episode. Again, thanks, Chris. It's been a riot hanging out with you. Really fun episode. You have a lot of knowledge. different takes on the game, a lot of history, which is really fun to hear. Brian, you know a little bit about everything. It's just been a great episode, so we really appreciate you for following us, for listening, and thanks for passing time with us. We'll see you next week.
I want to thank you guys. Real quick, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I want to thank you guys for having me on, and I just want to say what you guys are doing is important to the ecosystem of fans. Big things come from small beginnings, and sometimes it doesn't matter what your audience is. At the end of the day, as long as someone is being inspired or entertained or having fun with it, that is all that matters. Like, this is a communal act. I got into radio and podcasting because of this act, and it's why I love coming on with guys like you guys, because the passion is evident. No matter what the level is of what you're doing it or how many you're doing it for, this is why this ecosystem, it's why the damn internet exists for this kind of stuff. So thank you guys so much, because I can tell, like, this is a passion project for you guys, and
for
I
sure.
love that. I love when passion is evident.
Thank you, Chris. We really appreciate it, and this is the reason we do it. We're a couple buddies that just love the Lions and want to share it with the world, right? You know, so as much as we can get out there, we're gonna get out there. So
I grew up with underground radio, ham radio, and like late night stuff that just didn't make sense. Guys doing it for no damn reason other than because they could, and I will always appreciate it. Even if the joke is always about guys with podcasts, who cares? You're at least doing something productive for the world.
right.
Absolutely love it. So passing time with us, we talked about underground radio and all the things with Chris. Man, what a great episode. Go Lions, stay gritty. We'll see you next week.
See you guys.